Twilight of the Idols is, and I paraphrase Friedrich Nietzsche, a declaration of war against the eternal idols which are here touched with the hammer. To philosophize with a hammer is the motto of this book, the euphoric amalgamation of Nietzsche's entire life's work, composed by numbered sections ranging from a mere paragraph to a couple pages talking about topics ranging from politics, history, German, European, Indian, and Greek societies, humanities, mythology, spirituality, historical figures, and at the time of his writing, living figures, specifically Goethe, Wagner, and Schopenhauer. And of course, he talks about philosophy. Philosophy is essentially the love for knowledge, so Nietzsche, who is regarded by the translator in the introduction, is a philosopher among philosophers, and a philosopher for non-philosophers. The way Nietzsche talks about philosophy won't necessarily leave you more confused than before you read him, but will instead make you think about things differently. I will talk about this later. The main purpose of Twilight of the Idols, or as Nietzsche originally named it, a revaluation of all values, is a book criticizing man's virtues, specifically Christian morality, written by Nietzsche, who refers to himself as an immoralist. A little overview for Nietzsche is that he was a Christian at first, and he was raised Christian, and he actually studied theology, but in college he switched to philosophy, and basically in that moment he got a PhD. When he switched to philosophy when he was still studying as an undergrad, he immediately became like the dean or the president or like the head of philosophy at Leipzig. If you Google the name Nietzsche, or you watch YouTube videos or hear people talking about Nietzsche, you would hear people refer to him as like a nihilist. But if you actually read his stuff, he's not really nihilistic or really pessimistic, or he's not even existentialistic. He just comes at life and thinks about things in life just very differently, very abstractly than like the average human or even average philosopher. He's very critiquing of everything, especially in this book. That's what this book is about. Now, I said that Nietzsche isn't really a nihilist because of the way he thinks about things and talks about things, but the things that he is talking about is in a nihilistic view. It's just that I don't like the label of nihilist, because that makes it seem like, oh, like Rick from Rick and Morty, like, oh, nothing matters, I'm depressed, oh, fuck everything. Like, that's what I think when I hear nihilist. But then I actually read nihilistic work or Nietzsche, and it just goes so much deeper, because he sees the faults. A nihilistic person like Nietzsche sees the faults in just everything. He just has an ability to talk about the things that are wrong. And he isn't inherently wrong. There is a lot of things wrong in society. It's just the label nihilist isn't really that good, I don't think. Or at least it just gets a bad rap. Now, I'm not really a reader, especially for philosophy books, because the only philosophy book I've ever read has been like Attack on Titan or Charlotte's Web. But like I never cared about books. I always thought books were a waste of time. But I always liked the straightforwardness of textbooks and of Wikipedia. I just liked how they were just straightforward information. In this book, the intro of this book, it specifically talks about how, and in the back of the book too, it talks about how Nietzsche wrote this book aphorically, as in like very concisely, very pithy, very straightforward. To reiterate what I said about how reading this book or reading Nietzsche will make you think about things differently, I said that not like it will make you pessimistic. He even says that in the book. I'm gonna read exactly from the book. It says, "Pessimism, by the by, however contagious it may be, nevertheless does not add to the morbidity of an age or a race in general. It is the expression of this morbidity. One succumbs to it as one succumbs to cholera. One's constitution must already be sufficiently morbid. Pessimism does not itself make a single additional decadent. I recall that statistics show that the years in which cholera rages do not differ from the other years in the total number of deaths." Like, he's saying that like pessimism is basically a contagious disease, which it definitely is, but it's not like it always exists. It's just that someone adopts it to their life. It's like a inherent constant in society that people can adopt from themselves, like cholera, like a contagious disease. It's not even just about like a nihilism or pessimistic view on this world, but like the way Nietzsche talks about things, like even just the inherent will. Like, what is a will? What is a compelling driving force that causes people to exist, to live, to breathe, to do all this shit? Like he talks about things that we do or interact with every single day of our life, but he talks about it in a way that you don't think about, or at least you don't commonly think about, even though it's something you do every single day. And this is just a thing in philosophy. This is why philosophy is so interesting. Like, I just saw a PewDiePie video talking about Epicurus, in one of his books, he said that Epicurus said something like bodies move, or for bodies to move. And it had something to do with like the atom, because he was like the first person to ever discover an atom. And it's like, and PewDiePie even made a little joke like, oh, do bodies move? Like, and he moved his arms like, yeah, of course, like no shit. Like this is so like inherently tied to being a human that we don't think about this shit. Like you don't think about a will, you don't think about a compelling force, you don't think about breathing, you don't think about living. And yet in these philosophy books, they are exactly talking about those exact specific things. And they're talking about it in ways that are like just so good. Now I'm going to talk about specific sections in the book that I found to be very thoughtful and thought-provoking. Now there's this section I like in page 71 where he says, "No colportage psychology." And the word colportage has to do with like the distribution of like Bibles or of textbooks. So he says, "No colportage psychology. Never observe for the sake of observing. That produces a false perspective, a squint, something forced and exaggerated. To experience from a desire to experience, that's no good. In experiencing, one must not look back towards on oneself, or every glance becomes an evil eye." And then he said, "A born psychologist instinctively guards against seeing for the sake of seeing, and the same applies to a born painter. He never works from nature, he leaves it to his instinct, his camera obscura, to sift and strain nature, the case, the experience. He's only conscious of the universal, the conclusion, the outcome. He knows nothing of that arbitrary abstraction from the individual case." Now, when I read that, I think I immediately just like tried to interpret it, which I don't think you're supposed to do, because Nietzsche, he kind of contradicts himself like, or multiple times in this book. Like he could talk about one topic in one way, and then he revisits that topic like pages later, and it's like the complete opposite of what he said. And in this section of the book, he's talking about the two antithesis gods of Apollonian and Dionysus. And basically those two gods contradict each other and they're opposites. Apollonian, he talks about more like, or he represents like the logistics and thinking, and Nietzsche describes him as everything above the eye. And Dionysus, he's the god of wine and frenzy and like ecstasy, and he's more rooted in nature. But he's saying the born painter, I don't know if it's like, he does this thing where he like uses words to describe something, but I don't know if they're like literal. And for this case, like the born painter never works from nature. But that didn't really make sense to me, because like everyone just like thinks of art as like a emotional thing, like a emotional expression. But it did make sense that he said an artist or a born painter thinks about the conclusion or like the finished product. And he was talking about nature as in the nature of man. And I didn't know like exactly what nature he was talking about, as in like animal instincts or like an impulse, or if the nature he was talking about was more like Dionysian nature, as in like passion and emotion, or if the whole animal instinct and passion emotion is the same type of nature, which maybe it is, I don't know. Oh, and then in my notes I said that I kind of understand the camera obscura and how like the painter, it like comes from the painter and their like perspective or their view. This concept has conceptually done a 180 because of like more like contemporary art, and how maybe, I mean, that's just talking about art. Like, I'm just talking about art. I don't really think he's generally talking about art. But it also aged poorly because art nowadays is not treated as like a sophisticated, intelligent medium. Like during the Renaissance, like art was like an entire, like, you had like a really good painter, and the really good painter had had an apprentice, and they basically just learned everything, and that would be like the only way that you would be a painter, and it was like a entire profession. It was a big deal, and just paint was not available. Oh, and then this next part is really interesting, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and I've heard other people talk about this, but I haven't really like fully understood it. But he says an experience, oh, and Nietzsche is also like, he refers to himself as like a psychologist, but he says, in experiencing, one must not look back towards oneself, or every glance becomes an evil eye. An evil eye is just being envious. I think it like symbolizes envy. I think it's very true, because when you're experiencing something, you shouldn't really be focusing. You shouldn't be like, people say mindfulness is good, but like you honestly shouldn't be mindful, or you shouldn't focus too much on what you're experiencing or what you're feeling in the moment, and instead you should just experience what you're feeling, or just experience the moment as a whole. Because if you think about what you're feeling in the moment, it's more of a distraction, and maybe it's even like a form of dissociation, like you're preventing yourself from experiencing the moment. That's just something I like think about a lot, and it's just so interesting that he like thought that too, that he put that in this book. And the next thing I want to talk about is kind of a form of him contradicting himself. He's talking about a genuine Christian and how a genuine Christian cannot be an artist. And the specific example he uses is Raphael. And also throughout this book, or I guess throughout like what Nietzsche like argues in Christian morality, is that Christian morality is against human nature. And he refers to Christian morality as taming man. So he talks about, in short, a Christian in physiological terms, in the struggle with the beast, making it sick can be the only means of making it weak. The church understood. It corrupted the human being, it weakened him, but it claimed to have improved him. As in, like, taming man is like the pursuit of virtue. That's like, Christians think the taming of human nature will make them pure. That's their ascetic goal. And then he talked about his the other aspect of so-called morality, and he said breeding of a definite race and species, and the culture that did that was Indian morality. They sanctioned the law of Manu into religion, and they basically just like scapegoated an entire caste of human as the Chandala people. And that was the first time I've ever heard of like the Chandala people, and it was, these people were treated as like even their shadow was like disgusting. Like these people, they were like they worked with the dead. They were like completely like on the outskirts of Indian society, and that was India's version of like achieving morality. So Christian morality was like taming man, and Indian morality was like breeding the definitive moral race. Yeah, I guess kind of just scapegoating. Oh, and to go back on what I said about how genuine Christians can't be artists, it's because art is like inherently... Yeah, he was talking about how this is how he contradicted himself, because he was talking about how like painting and sculpting is like, because he was talking about Apollonian as artists, or as these painters and sculptors. But then he talks about how Dionysus, and how music and passion comes from Dionysus. So he's like saying that like some arts are like logical and not passionate, and then other arts are logical and passionate. Like, this is kind of what I don't get. Maybe Apollonian and Dionysus are just two sides of the same coin that is against morality, or at least against Christian morality. Because if he says that like Raphael can't be a genuine Christian because he's a painter or because he's an artist. Even though he's an Apollonian artist in Nietzsche's eyes, then that still means it's against Christian morality. And in the introduction, or I guess the foreword of the introduction, Nietzsche, he has this thing called Maximus and Eros, and it's just like 40 little, like, one sentence little, like, excerpts, I guess, where he's just, I don't know, talking about random stuff. And for the 32nd one, he says, hatred of lies and dissembling may arise out of a sensitive notion of honor. The same hatred may arise out of cowardice, inasmuch as lying is forbidden by divine command. Too cowardly to tell lies, ... And what I kind of got from that was, so hatred of lies makes sense as like a sensitive notion to honor, because like lying goes against honor. But then he says the same hatred may arise out of cowardice. And I think I get that too, because like the same hatred of lying out of cowardice, maybe it I think it kind of means that it's like competitive, like it's like competitive cowardice, or like, because like I think like people can like hate lying, but they like do it themselves and they just like project that hatred. Then he says the same hatred may arise out of cowardice, inasmuch as lying is forbidden by divine command. That he's saying that the church is lying or is cowardice. He says lying is forbidden by divine command, but then he says too cowardly to tell lies. And I don't really know, this is, all of these Maximus and Eros are very like ambiguous, but like maybe it could be the church not needing to lie, like the church like construing God's word to benefit themselves, or like the whole thing of overly like the exploitation of money, or like pastors or whoever, like the people that at the head of a church like abusing their power. But the whole thing with like Kenneth Copeland, him defending his lavish lifestyle, or just the entire movie of Wake Up Dead Man. Yeah. And then so in my notes I said that I think the dissembling of a church is there projected onto Christians because the church or religions as a whole is guilty of lying. Lying is forbidden by divine command. Too cowardly to tell lies. They still lie, just in like a self-aware, like lawyer court case type of way, where they are too cowardly to honestly lie, to tell a straightforward lie like a normal person would. They like you, and I'm saying that as in like they like use the word of God to like get what they want, and then acting like it's still okay even though what they're doing is not okay. They just tell a lie that is to be construed by using God's name or God's power in vain. There's a TikTok about that.
How did Christians interpret "don't use my name in vain" as "don't say oh my God," and not "don't use my name to control and do horrible things to other humans"?
And on page 84, he talks about Kant's civil service. And he talks about Kant kind of a lot in this book, and he really respected Kant. And Kant's word, or Nietzsche's word, was the civil servant as a thing in itself, set as judge over the civil servant as appearance. And my interpretation of that was the idea of a civil servant is like what man is supposed to be in a society, a goal to work towards, an image to adopt. The belief comes from within and is therefore fulfilling the bearer's societal role, quote, a member of society, at least what he thinks he is supposed to be doing. For the life one lives as a civil servant dictates the civil servant appearance one bears. I think also like this is kind of like Marx is, I think kind of, I never really read Marx, or I don't know too much about Marx, but he talks a lot about like man's role in economy. He's just more like abstractly thinking about it. There's like the theoretical version of the civil servant. or the life one lives as a civil servant dictates the civil servant's appearance one bears. What I mean by that is that it's more up to like the individual of like their identity in comparison to society. And like a movie that kind of talks about that is Bugonia. You can have like a CEO, someone who is seen and sees themselves as like the top, and then you could have like a factory worker, someone who is seen and sees themselves as the bottom. I think that there's definitely some like Marxist thing going on in there that I don't really know about. And then he talks about, in page 98, he talks about the criminal, or Nietzsche's idea of a criminal. And he talks about how the criminal goes against the structure of society. A man born from nature, forced to live in unfavorable conditions. People not suited for society, people instead suitable for nature. And his example was Napoleon. All great people, no matter how great, were disvalued to the Pope. My interpretation of what he said there, especially for Napoleon, is like someone that like, he talked about how like Napoleon was special because the like antiquity like figures before him were also special, and like he also said that for like the Renaissance, like Nietzsche really liked the Renaissance and said that society today are like decaying. He says that word a lot. He uses the French word decadence, and I haven't really talked about that yet, but he uses that like throughout the book, and it's just basically nihilism. It's just decaying, like shit's getting worse, he thinks. But he's saying that since Napoleon had really powerful, influential, a really good society behind him, he used that, but he was also like different. Like he was, I guess, non-conforming in a way, and he was like unique, and that's why Napoleon was so important and influential and just like one of a kind, because he was different from the norm. And there's another way that you can interpret that, because Nietzsche, he's using the word criminal, and I don't know if that's just like something he thought of as in his head, or if that's actually something like as in like any sort of criminal, because philosophers do talk about criminals a lot as in like the stranger, and also like crime and punishment. Like the criminal is a very like philosophical figure, kind of. If Nietzsche is talking about the street criminal, I think the criminal represents the nonconformist, the morally different, or in society's eyes, the morally confused. Things are only illegal because of moral society agreed upon. And like that is like a more deep concept that Ollie Sunvia's video talks about. And that way of thinking of it, as thinking as like the criminal as just like a street criminal, or I guess also Napoleon, like would fit Nietzsche's view of morality, as in like the morally ambiguous archetype. Okay, and this last part is the end of the book. On page 110, what Nietzsche called the Dionysian, or the tragic poet, was an artist who had a great zeal to their life, and life has thrown so much at them that they became who they are, the tragic poet, because of it. Not letting the bad of their life turn them into pessimists, but they stay as passionate, sincere beings, artists, Dionysians. And for an example, I put Franz Kafka, because he kind of is like he is like the tragic poet, because he is tragic and he is a poet, so he's the tragic poet. And then for the other examples, I put the streamer Will Neff and the winner in the Long Walk movie. He put in page 77 that the most spiritual human beings, assuming they are the most courageous, also experience by far the most painful tragedies. But it is precisely for this reason that they honor life, because it brings against them its most formidable weapons. Like these people who experience bad things in their life, they like have the capability of experiencing such good but also such bad, but they continue to be on that path because they know to look for the rainbows in life. As Nietzsche or Aristotle said, to realize in oneself the eternal joy of becoming, that joy which also encompasses joy in destruction. These characters people understand that life is a gift, and that you have to look at the good and the bad to appreciate life and to keep going. Also in the book, he talks about pain is sanctified. The pains of childbirth sanctify pain in general. All becoming and growing, all that guarantees the future postulates pain. For the eternal joy in creating to exist, for the will to life, eternally to affirm itself, the torment of childbirth must also exist eternally. All this is contained in the word Dionysus. I know of no more exalted symbolism than this Greek symbolism, the symbolism of the Dionysian, the profoundest instinct of life, the instinct for the future of life, for the eternity of life, is in this world experienced religiously, the actual road to life, procreation, as the sacred road. You can think of it as childbirth hurting because as a child goes through their life, they will be hurt, and that life brings pain, and through pain brings on more life. The reference to the Dionysian as a figure is more of an abstract representation of what the god Dionysius brings to the world, but also as the tragedy and comedy masks in Greek plays. Dionysian being the god of wine, but more actually about passion, a representation of human nature as Nietzsche made it out to be, is the perfect representation of the tragic poet, the embodiment of a passionate soul destined with a tragic life. Nietzsche talks about how spiritual or passionate people are given the worst weapons from this world. I think this is because they can choose to continue with their life and grow and move forward, or it can let them define them and turn them evil and pessimistic. The special people are special because they went through the things that they went through, ultimately becoming and growing their entire life. The special people are special because they went through the things they went through in their life. And I quote Henry Bergson, "To exist is to change is to mature is to go on creating oneself endlessly." Just to kind of wrap up this book, like any page you open this book, you're gonna read something very interesting. This book is just written very just great, like it's just good. It's just a very amazing book. I highly recommend it. And now it's time to read The Antichrist.